Hi everyone, welcome to episode 49 of Woolen Spinning. My name is Rachel and I can be found pretty much everywhere as well for pearls. It is Thursday, December 8th, and I'm coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. I want to just take a really quick moment to thank all of our Patreon subscribers who keep the show on the air week after week. I wouldn't be here without you guys, and I want to thank you so much for your time and effort to go and check all that out and to participate. Because it's the second week of the month, it means that we have our monthly draw. I offer this to my Patreon subscribers. So you can either have the woolen spinning mug, and I will ship that off to you if you choose that, or you can have a set of stitch markers. If you'd like the stitch markers, you can go to the Etsy shop and have a look around and let me know which ones you choose. So this month's winner was Mary of Mountain View, Arkansas. So congratulations, Mary, because she's been working away on her workshop stuff for the last couple months and making some really good progress. So I was pleased when I saw that you'd won. So congratulations, Mary. Just get in touch with me if you'd like the mug or if you'd like some stitch markers. Just check the Etsy shop if you'd like the stitch markers and let me know what you'd like. So this past week has sort of passed in a blur. We have continued to be sick and continuing to fight colds and viruses and whatnot. I was basically in bed all weekend. I just crashed on Friday and didn't really get up until Sunday. I really wasn't feeling well. And what actually took me down was a migraine. And I don't get migraines very often. It's been a couple of years since I've had one, so it was really unpleasant. It's starting to dissipate now and starting to pass, which is nice, but the kids are still sick, and we did get a clear bill of health for Norah because she's been quite sick. But it's all upper respiratory, and hopefully she's on the mend and has turned the corner. So I have gotten a little bit of knitting done. I did finish one thing. This is a Christmas present and part of our blast off along that we're working on right now in the Ravelry group. This is the little Scallops toque with some modifications. So this is actually a Christmas present for my niece. So if my brother or sister-in-law are watching, please look away. Claire has not a very big head, so I did size this to Norah so that Claire would have room to grow into it. And I threw a pom-pom on top, which is not part of the original pattern. The cream yarn is actually commercial yarn. It was leftover Cascade 220 Sport from my stash, and I actually held it double to add some warmth to the toque. And then this little scallops pattern in here. In the pattern, you work the scallop pattern once, and then the rest of the toque is all that one color. So the bottom is the one color, and then your contrast color is the crown. But for Claire, and because I would like to get another one of these toques out of this Savvy Skeins hand spun yarn that I did years ago, I did another repeat of the scallops pattern and finished off the crown in the cream. So it sort of adds like a rainbow sort of stripe, if you will. And then I added a pom-pom at the top. So it turned out really nicely. I'm really happy with how it looks, and I think it's really cute. I've taken a couple of photos of Norah wearing it, and I am going to make it a little bit bigger for Norah because she is a little bit bigger. But thankfully I'll have enough yarn left over, and if I have time, I'm going to do a pair of mittens to match for both of the girls, but we'll see if I get time. So that was something that I worked on over the weekend. It took me about 2 hours to do. I ripped out the other one like I said I was going to, and I recast it on, and this was the results. So I'm glad that that's done. It's the last gift that had to get done. So if nothing else gets done, it's not a big deal, but that one needed to get done. So James saw me working on that, and he asked me, way back I knit him a pair of mittens out of some West Coast Color and Carding Superwash BFL, and he wanted rainbow mitts, and you guys might remember me talking about them, so I'll slot a photo in here so that you can see them. And basically, this is the leftover yarn that I have from those mittens. He's been asking for a matching toque, so I have some more cream in my stash, and I'm going to do the same pattern sized for a 4 or 5 year old, and this will be the crown, and I'll just knit till I run out. I won't worry about, with this one I had to worry about having enough yarn for a second toque. This one I'm just going to knit, and whatever I have left over is left over. I might use it in the pom-pom on the top if he wants one, but I'm going to cast that on for him because he's been asking for a rainbow toque to match his rainbow mitts. And he's been wearing his mittens a ton and he loves them, so I really want to make him a matching toque if that's what he really wants. So that will go on needles this weekend. Hopefully I'm working, and I'll hopefully get a chance to cast it on before I go to work, and then I can just work on it on my breaks. because I was so sick over the weekend, I actually did get a little bit of crafting done because I was just sitting on the couch and working on stuff quietly. And if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen this yarn, and it was knit up, not in balls. And I ripped it all out. So I cast on for the Melanie Berg's brand new shawl pattern called the Decemberist. And I got to 6 rows from the end. I had 3 rows of lace left and 1 row of purling left. No, 3 rows of purl left and cast off. And I ran out of yarn. And I wasn't actually that upset about it. I just ripped it all out and I re-skeined all of the yarn, and I am going to do something else with it. And the reason is because these 3 balls are not like the other one. So this ball over here is actually quite a bit different in terms of the weight. It's more like a worsted weight yarn. It's much denser. The yardage was quite a bit poorer. It's much more tightly twisted. So I'm going to knit a pair of fingerless mitts for myself out of this yarn, because I ran out of my Wensleydale yarn to be able to knit a pair for myself of fingerless mitts, which I had hoped for. So this is going to be that instead. And this I'm going to do a cabled cowl out of instead. And I'm actually really looking forward to that. I'm going to knit till I run out of yarn, and I'll have a matching set, which would be really nice. So you guys will notice a costume change on my part, and it's actually a different day. I recorded the first part of the podcast a couple of days ago, and no matter what I did, the kids just were not going to let me finish. My mom was with them, but they kept running away from my mom and running in here, and they were just doing everything they could to interrupt me. And I know it's because I was recording and they were feeling ignored. And they'd had a great time outside with my mom, but I think they were cold and wanting some attention. So I didn't even bother trying. I just shut it all down and figured I'd get here another day. So one of the other projects I've been working on is my fireside pullover. And I will hold it up just like I did before. I have actually finished the body, so it is completely finished, and I just have to do the sleeves now. And the only reason why I haven't started the sleeves is because I knew that I was going to be recording and I wanted to show you where I was. So that is the body. I did lengthen the body by about 5 inches because I am so long torsoed, and I did the 3 inches of 1x1 rib at the bottom like is called for in the pattern. And that is what it looks like. I did try it on. I am happy with how it fits, and I just need to do the sleeves and it'll be done. So there isn't much to report on that. If you're interested in more about that, hearing about that sweater, just head back a couple of episodes. So something else that I wanted to share with you that I haven't, I keep putting off talking about it with you guys, is my exploration station. So I have it on display here. I used 3 different balls of Three Waters Farm. All 3 were handled differently when I spun the color. So one was a fractal 3-ply, one was a traditional 3-ply where I just broke the braid up as much as I could, spun 3 bobbins and plied. And the third one was chain plied. They were all different colorways, and I will put them in links to each of them in the show notes, because hopefully I'll have show notes this week and you guys can see what each of the colorways was originally. The one thing about the 3 colorways that linked them together was they had the same lime green color, the same rusty brown color, and the same sky blue color. And so that was what sort of tied the 3 together and helped them to work together. And then I bought years ago, well, not years ago because it's a relatively new colorway, so it must have been last year. Sweet Georgia Yarns is Auburn on a 100% BFL base. I had spun this as singles, and it was the one thing in my stash that tied all 3 together. So I used it for the lattice work, and I used it for the bottom edging for the lace. I made copious mistakes on this. The brioche is not 2-color brioche. I have done 2-color brioche in the past. I have no idea what I was thinking. It came out as 2 columns of knit stitches instead of 1 column of knit and 1 column of purl. It was totally an oversight on my part. By the time I was far enough down into it, there was no way I was going to rip it out. It was just way too much knitting. So the back doesn't look quite right for 2-color brioche because it should be the mirror opposite. But the nice thing about it is that it does show the 2 colorways off quite nicely. And then the slip stitches section I didn't do properly, and what it ended up looking like is like just a column of 1x1 rib. However, the nice thing about these two sections, even though they do have quite a few mistakes in them, to a non-knitter, which is the majority of people who you meet when you're wearing this stuff, they would never know the difference and they would never be able to tell. And it does show off the two colorways in each of the sections quite nicely. So this is two of the colorways and this is two of the other colorways. And this in here and the second color in this one are the same two colorways, and yet they look very different. And then I love how this bottom section turned out with the it's all knitting, that whole section, and I just love how it turned out. I still have quite a big bad cough, and I'm trying not to cough on the podcast, so just bear with me. So that's how that turned out, and it's quite huge, as you can see. It goes around the back of my dress form, and it's got quite a lovely width to it. It also has a nice length. I probably will wear this like a kerchief, but in the meantime, before I get it photographed and everything, this is sort of how it's hanging on my dress form. It's very soft. I did iron it to block it because it was just too big to block on my blocking board. I'm hoping that over Christmas, when we've got a break for a couple weeks, I'm hoping that I'll get it a chance to actually get it washed and actually get it pinned out. But I'm also afraid that it'll get even bigger, and I don't want it to get any bigger. So I just pressed the points with my iron and flattened it out with the iron on the rest of it, just very, very gently, so that it wouldn't, it was quite ripply when I first finished it, so I just wanted to press it flat. But that is that. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was very fast. I ended up doing it in under 2 months. I think I cast it on at the beginning of September, and I finished it right at the beginning of November, and I didn't work on it exclusively. I worked on other stuff as well. Like many of Stephen West's patterns, it's interesting enough because it changes enough times that it keeps you engaged and you're excited to go on to the next section. I will say though, by the end, there was about 500 stitches per row, and it was getting very, very labor intensive. And the other thing is that I found some of it to be sort of tedious because you've just got row after row of knitting, and whether garter or straight knitting, and these big shawls are just, they're a lot of work, and I'm glad that I'm finished. Whether I'll cast on another big shawl right away, I don't know. And after my little pitfall with the Decemberist shawl, I'm not sure I'm going to do another shawl right away. I love shawls and I wear them a lot, but they're not my favorite thing to knit. So yeah, I'm really happy with this, but like I said, I'm kind of done with shawls for a little bit, so we will see. I really wanted to spend a few minutes today, and I won't spend a long time, but I wanted to spend a couple minutes just talking about Yarn-i-tec-ture. The lovely folks over at Story Publishing sent this to me to review and to chat with you guys about. I have looked it over. I haven't read it cover to cover. I will. I tend to take my time with these books and really sit and read and savor sort of what they're all about. One of the things that I really wanted to say initially about this book is I wish that a book like this was around when I was first learning to spin, because I think it would have answered a lot of my initial questions. The photography in it is phenomenal, which is very typical of the Story Publishing books. I've always felt that their photography was really excellent. It's written by Jillian Moreno, who is obviously a huge spinning guru out there. Many of us know her name. She's done a couple of Craftsy classes. She's the editor of Knitty Spin at knitty.com, and she does a lot of the articles for Knitty Spin. And her wealth of knowledge is vast, and obviously she has a lot of it. I think if you put this book together with Beth Smith's book, A Spinner's Book of Fleece, I think those two books would be an awesome starting point for somebody who's ready to move to the next level for spinning, wants to get into more breed-specific yarns, because while she talks about the breeds in here, there's a whole chapter on them. It's certainly not as in-depth as the Spinner's Book of Fleece gets. That's this chapter here, Sheep Breeds and Beyond. And I think after you read The Intentional Spinner by Judith Mackenzie McEwen. That book is a great book to sort of get you going and get you over that hump after you actually learn how to make the continuous strand on your spinning wheel. Once you go from that book to and learning the difference between protein fibers and cellulose fibers, because that book goes into a lot of depth about that, I find that book leaves you with a lot of questions at the end. You sort of want to know more, especially if you're spinning on a wheel. So if you're spinning on a wheel, the next book I would recommend is this one and The Spinner's Book of Fleece. Put those two together, read them. And I think by the end of reading those 3 books, you'll have a really good foundation. If you're a spindle spinner, I would go directly to Respect the Spindle. So I would read Respect the Spindle by Abby Frankmont, and I'd also read The Intentional Spinner by Judith Mackenzie McEwen, mostly because the beginning part of that book is just knowledge every spinner needs to have. I wasn't going to buy this book. I'll be honest. I feel like I'm far enough along in my spinning journey that I don't particularly need a book like this for me personally. Is it a good reference manual for me to have in my library? Absolutely. Would I have loved it as a gift? Absolutely. There's lots and lots of stuff in here. She talks about grist. There's a whole section on knitting with your hand spun. There's a whole section on how to finish your yarns. So what it looks like when you do all these different things to your yarns, which I think is really interesting. She goes through and shows you what all the knitted fabrics look like after you finish them all the different ways. So, unfinished, steamed, soaked, whacked. This is a centripetal force, snapped, fold, and menaced. I've never seen that before in a book, and she also compares merino, Corriedale, blueface Lister, and Tussa silk. So these 4 samples are all different fibers, and I've never seen that before in a book. There's a whole section on, she goes through bracelet plying. There's a really, really good picture tutorial on how to do bracelet plying. I was sort of surprised with everything that people like Abby Frankmont have put out there about the fact that bracelet plying is not Andean plying and it's still being called Andean plying. I was sort of surprised to see that in a book like this, just because I know that the two of them are friends. And I know that there's been a lot of education out there about the fact that this technique is not Andean plying, it's bracelet plying, and Andean plying is actually a whole other type of technique. So I was a little bit surprised about that. The nice thing about this is that she shows her technique for how to do bracelet plying, but there are other techniques out there that people use. So it was nice to see another option out there. I think I could just go on and on and on about it and talk about it indefinitely and continue to sort of rave about it. I think it's an excellent book for somebody who is trying to make that jump from being a true beginner to an intermediate spinner, somebody who maybe doesn't have access to taking a class that's a comprehensive course that will take you from being a true beginner to being an intermediate. I think it's also a nice manual to have when you're at home in the evening and you're spinning away and you've got all these questions and you don't really have anywhere to turn to and you don't want to sift through hundreds of blog posts and Google searches. All the information is in one spot. This book, I think, I don't actually know if I know the retail price of this book. I know when I was thinking about buying it, I felt that it was very reasonable. Of course, in Canada, we pay more for our books. But I do think that this is an excellent place for many people who are trying to bridge that gap between having started spinning and needing some more information. I would highly recommend reading the chapters about knitting with hand spun, since I'm such a big advocate of knitting with hand spun. There are patterns in the back of the book. None of the patterns really jumped out at me per se, although I did really like this one cardigan by Bristol Ivy. It's just a very simple flat fronted cardigan that doesn't close. I wear stuff like this all the time, and so I may use the pattern as a jumping off point to knit something very similar for myself. And there's copious other patterns in here for those who are looking for patterns. The one thing I was going to say, I'm just trying to find the table of contents. She does have an entire chapter on drafting and an entire chapter on plying. And I think those two chapters just in and of themselves make this book worthwhile, especially for those of you who are struggling with getting really consistent yarn and want to have all that information in one place and don't necessarily want to buy 2 or 3 different Craftsy classes, and don't have access to going to a class and actually learning from someone in person. So I think having all that information in one spot is really important. The other book that reminds me of this a little bit is Spin Control by Amy King. If you have that book, you'll maybe know what I'm talking about. There are similarities between the two books. I don't think that one is better than the other. I think they offer a slightly different perspective, and I think that a lot of this stuff is just adding to your arsenal. So as many different sort of compendiums as you can get if you're a reader and if you're going to use it. All of these books are awesome to add to your library. One book that I own that I have found very, very valuable is my Alden Amos's book, the compendium. What's it called? It's the hand spinning. It's the really big, thick one. I'll put the title in. That book, because of the way that it's written, and there is some information in there that is not accurate. It was sort of more conjecture and opinion, and it has been disproven. I would recommend, as you're getting more and more advanced, some of those types of books for a spinner who's looking to become, more advanced and maybe wanting to start teaching. And the other stuff that I would recommend is getting a subscription to Ply Magazine. I think that is priceless. And if you have access to it through your guild, that's an even better resource, because then you don't have to keep them on your shelf. You can just borrow them from your guild. So those are all of my thoughts on Yarn-i-tec-ture. I think for those who are looking for more information and want to become more technical spinners, this is a definite book for all of the spinners out there and wanting to make that jump to have on your bookshelf. But the only value in this book is actually reading it. So I wouldn't recommend buying it and just using it to flip through. I would actually recommend buying it and reading it. So those are my 2 cents. I hope that you guys are doing really well. Next week will be the last show before the Christmas break. And there may or may not be some prizes awarded for Zero to Hero 2016 and for the Blast Off Along. And then I also next week have a couple of announcements to make for the new year. So please stay tuned to that if you are a Patreon subscriber. Fiber Club has been mailed out. I actually popped it in the mail this morning. And I heard from Karen over at Farm Fairy Fiber. She has all of the 2 colorways that she chose based on the photos that you uploaded into the color study thread. They're all ready to go. They have been photographed, and stay tuned for more about that in the next week or so. And Patreon subscribers will be able to buy their fiber first, and after that we will open it up to everyone else. So stay tuned, and until next week, happy spinning everyone. Bye.